Hello, fellow state students. My name is Mitchell Wasik, and I volunteered for the White Rose Society. We are a volunteer organization with the goal of promoting Holocaust awareness, as well as promoting the better treatment of refugees and immigrants. So if you look at the handout I gave you at the top, there's a little data about the current Holocaust awareness. So 2/3 of American millennials cannot even identify what Auschwitz is. 11% of U.S. adults and over 20% of millennials haven't even heard of the Holocaust. So I think this is just a gross negligence to teach everyone about what happened and acknowledge that it happened, and we aim to help, fill that void. So what we actually do is we hand out 10,000 roses once a year. It's an annual event to symbolize every person that could have died in one day at Auschwitz. And records show that roughly 1.1 to 1.3 million people died, but over the span of 5 years, which is a lot less than 10,000, but there's actually evidence to suggest that they could do a lot more than that. Unfortunately, there's not exactly good records that were kept. So the original White Rose Society was actually founded in Germany by students at the University of Munich. They were not Jewish, but they spoke out against the Nazi regime and were subsequently executed by the Gestapo in 1943. And we try to embody the values that they carried, and we think that we can use our platform to push people to contact their congressmen to support the DREAM Act. We think that the way people treat immigrants and refugees today is eerily similar to how they treated the Jewish population. For example, during World War II, the ship, the St. Louis, had roughly 1,000 passengers, mostly Jewish, all fleeing Europe trying to escape the Nazis, and they were denied entry into Cuba, United States, and Canada. They were actually basically held for ransom in Cuba. They wanted $500 a person just to be able to get a boarding pass. In the United States, they didn't even answer them. They just wouldn't even let them. They wouldn't even let them come to port. So they got sent back, and then roughly half of them were captured and died in the war. So we think that we can help, solve that problem. So typically people learn about the Holocaust, through internet research, books, museums. Some schools mandate that you learn it, but it's only, I think, 7 states in the United States of varying degrees. And one of the best methods is through a first-hand story from someone who survived it. But unfortunately, the youngest Holocaust survivors currently are in their mid-70s, so they're not going to be around much longer. So we hope to fill that void, and we want to grow our volunteer organization. So the way that you can help us is obviously schools are very convenient if you need to hand out 10,000 flowers in one day. It's a population dense center with a lot of foot traffic. So we currently hand them out on UT campus, mostly at West Mall. But if we were to hand them out here, we would get access to a whole new student body, and it would make it a lot easier. Even if we only gave you 500 to 1,000 roses, it would make my job significantly easier. And there's actually more roles than just handing out the flowers. There's, first of all, buying 10,000 flowers is not as easy as it sounds. There's not just a florist they have to be white roses, they can't be red roses, and they all have to be dethorned because you don't want to, hand someone a rose and have it prick them. That would not be very nice. And then you have to attach all the flowers. Someone has to run the buckets around. You have to actually coordinate people's schedules. If you've ever tried to manage people, you have to figure out who's in class at this time, where can you be, how many people do I expect to walk by that location, who's going to bring you the roses, and who's going to go buy them. There's actually a lot more going on. There's also table managers for the DREAM Act, so when we hand you a flower, we encourage that you go to the table and they'll give you a postcard. You can sign a note to it and you'll send it to whatever congressman's in your district that you live in to support the DREAM Act, and that's completely optional for each person. You don't have to, you can just tell them about it. You don't actually have to force anything onto them. It's a pretty small time commitment, which is one of the large advantages because obviously it's an annual event. It happens on Holocaust Remembrance Day, but it's important to understand there's a distinct difference between International Holocaust Remembrance Day and the Holocaust Remembrance Day. The International Day is January 27th, but the one respected by the Jewish community happens somewhere between April to May. The variance is due to the difference between the Hebrew calendar and the Gregorian calendar. So it's only about 3 to 6 hours a year. It could be more if you're a logistics manager because you're bound to do that job as well as anyone else's and pick up the slack. So, in conclusion, today we talked about the White Rose Society and its relation to Auschwitz and the horrible tragedies that occurred there, and how we promote the awareness and want to fill the void of the aging Holocaust survivors. We also talked about how the original White Rose Society supported the better treatment of a population other than themselves, which we aim to do with immigrants and refugees in today's society. And if you would like to volunteer with me, please feel free to talk to me afterwards. I would love to set up a network rather than just have St. Edward students come and help at University of Texas, but to actually set up something here. Because it's actually extremely difficult whenever the day falls off late in May after school stops. It can be very difficult to hand out 10,000. A lot harder, because this year it was April 12th, so actually it wasn't nearly as difficult. But thank you for your time. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.